Chapter 4. Malice Attracted Again. Emergency call from 030440-235 Code 1. A female control center operator screamed out at the Academy Central Control Center. No way. 1. That means a large battle has broken out. The tense face of the control director tensed up even further. Quickly confirm the location of the code and confirm the situation, a calm-looking commander said. What the heck? In the thousands of years I've worked here, we haven't had a single Code 1 call at the Academy. The Academy often had trouble such as conflicts between various races, tribes, religions, customs, or social clusters, and even collective or personal feuds were common. They had a department always on call to deal with these situations. One of the control directors suggested that this particular situation might have been a form of retaliation in response to the mass space pirate capture that Sena had recently been responsible for. They located the area of the battle. It was the GP Academy's men's dorms. The operators figured that the call was a malfunction in the system. The operator reported to his superior that the vehicle under the dorm had been taken. Well, then it seems someone succeeded in escaping. I hope they have a fun night. The chief ordered them to ignore the alert they received. Meanwhile, in a luxurious condominium suite on a small island connected by lots of highways to the mainland of the GP facilities, Aaine was lounging about the penthouse suite she had just purchased. Oh, I am so bored, Aaine said to herself as she lounged about in an oversized t-shirt and pants. Every one of her friends had told her they were busy and refused to come help her celebrate her moving into her new apartment. She slid off her sofa and onto the floor like a slug. She heard her doorbell ring. Who is it? She went to check on the monitor who it was. Oh, my sweet Aaine. It was Sirio. She punched the monitor he was displayed on, and it crumbled to dust, and then she opened up her door and threw a biodecontamination grenade outside. She ran to go take a shower. She had a pathological urge to purify herself after hearing his voice. She hated Sirio and found him abhorrent like a cockroach. After she had finished showering, she made herself some tea and thought of Sena. She called up his dorm to see how he was doing. A hologram of a woman came up. Good evening. This is Galaxy Academy GP Department Male Student Dormitory. I am very sorry, but external communication at this time is prohibited. Furthermore, shut up. This is urgent. Urgent. She put in her override code, and it displayed Sena's room. She saw Sena's dummy sleeping in the bed. Get up, Sena, she called out at full volume. You bastard, fine, don't get up. Is that? Her intuition told her something was off. What's wrong? Miss Aaine, a middle-aged woman wearing a white coat over a woman's suit, asked. She had hair even shorter than Aaine's. She was formerly the chief designer of the Guardian system. If your father saw you like this, he would be miserable. Ryreza. I'm fine. Leave me alone. I need to check something out. She looked over the data she was receiving from the feed to Sena's room. She confirmed it was a dummy and looked out her window at the city where Sena was surely headed. Are you going to go find him? Yes. What should I do with Sirio? Throw him into the Academy's sun and never mention him again. Aaine went to get dressed and put on her makeup. Sirio found out about her plans and daydreamed about her doing inappropriate things to Sena. He had a conniption fit and began pressing the buzzer of Aaine's door. Eventually, he gave up and decided to also go to the city to find Sena. There were few private houses and other facilities around the GP Academy, so there was no real artificial lighting to be found in the area at night. On that night, the neighborhood was dark because of the new moon. The stars in the sky were also obstructed by the ruffled cliffs of a nearby canyon. The highway Sena and his roommates were driving down looked like it was floating in the dark. The night wind feels good, Kenneth said to Rajo in the back seat of the air car. Sena was anxious at driving, but they assured him that the air car was on autopilot, so he no longer had to drive. They also assured him that the door they broke through on the way out of the academy was fine. It was actually a rule that they had to steal the car and break through the door. Kenneth told him not to worry about it and pointed at the city in front of them. It was very pretty. An air car filled with girls came up next to them. Hey girls, where are you going? Where's the party? Kenneth asked them. They looked at his face, which had a mark from the drone on it, and screamed, and they drove away super fast. Kenneth and Rajo were both sad. They couldn't go to the party at Imuim or even Nampa Girls. Back at the Academy Control Center, the people employed there were trying their best to keep the facility's automated defense systems from deploying in response to a similar code they had received from the air car. The error code passed through another system before it got to theirs, and that was causing them issues with overriding it. The code was being sent to Washu and Neja's Memorial Lab. The people at the Academy Control Center identified the group in the car. They found out Sana was on board. Eri, being the president of the Academy, was getting bombarded with reports. Mikami teased her over it. A GP patrol car with 2 officers inside followed a few miles behind Sana's air car. Hey, why do we have to chase these kids? They succeeded in escaping. What's it to us? A female police officer grumbled to her partner. The vehicle those boys are on has broken down and it keeps on sending out emergency codes. We have orders to stop it. The highway lost power and all the lights went out. It was jet black. The officer's partner began telling ghost stories as they drove. The female officer was uncomfortable with him telling ghost stories, and soon in their headlights they saw an eerie sight. They saw 2 eerie men with their bodies covered in scary marks wearing paper bags on their head. The officers got scared and started shooting while screaming. They reported a scared warning back to the Academy Control Center. Meanwhile, Mikami reported back to Eri that Kariko had been poking around in the GP security system. She decided to send Ringo and the Cedo scouts to guard Sana. 2 aircraft pilots were following Sana as well. They received orders from Eri not to attack, but to instead follow them. Sana looked up at the shining city. Today's festival is quite loud, said Kenneth. There were large flocks of helicopters flying over them, and they could hear a shooting sound in the distance. But that is a military-level fighter, and it's completely armed. Isn't it a bit unnatural to have one in a parade? Oh, then it must be a military parade. I see. Well, I guess. It looks a bit strange. Sana, the most important thing for us now is to enjoy this evening, not to question it. Exactly. Sana was very aware of people around him staring at him, but it wasn't him necessarily who was being stared at. Kenneth and Rajo next to him had on suspicious-looking paper bags with eye and mouth holes cut out on them, and they were hitting on the girls that passed them by. Kenneth, Rajo, don't you think those bags look strange? What? Should I have drawn on some hair? Hey, you didn't get shot by that policewoman, did you? Kenneth and Rajo hit the back of Sana with a giggling laugh. Sana looked at the air car, which was incredibly damaged. They had been shot at by a pair of policewomen, and they had driven into a forest to escape before they made it to the city. Hey, Rajo, that policewoman, do you think she's all right? I could have sworn I heard that car hitting a tree. I'm sure they're fine. That's right, that's right. Their car's autopilot program malfunctioned, and they hit a streetlight pillar. It died. And finally at this time the Code 1 call which was being emitted from the car stopped. And just when the Code 1 call ceased, Kariko arrived in the town. Where is Sana? She said out loud as she hacked into a system that no one but the highest-ranking members of the Academy knew about. It was a sensor system that traced the behavior and movement patterns of everyone in the Academy. She saw that many people were gathering around one point. She noticed a large amount of marked human hunters. What's going on? Is this some kind of large-scale combat exercise? That's strange, I didn't hear anything about that. She noticed that a bunch of people marked as people hunters were gathering around the area and figured it had to be where Sana was. Kariko decided to call Mikami to ask for her to send people to arrest the human hunters. Behind Mikami, she could hear many angry noises. Many angry words were coming out from the back of the busy Mikami. A lot of commotion was going on that night. Mikami told Kariko that the Cedo scouts and Ringo had been dispatched and that was all Cedo deemed necessary. Kariko understood. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Aaine was headed towards the city in a small cruiser while she accessed the net. All over the internet, human hunters were exchanging information on Sana. The internet was overflowing with information on Sana. Naturally, some of it was wrong, but Aaine used her intuition to pick the reliable information out of the mass jumble of information. Aaine's best weapon was her unusual intuition. It was easy for her to figure out a person's footsteps. She noticed that Kariko was creating a disturbance of her own. Even so, she loaded up a whole map of the city and after looking at it for a while pointed to the exact spot Sana was at. Oh! He has to be here. Her intuition was scarily accurate. Syria was also searching for Sana, but he had encountered a situation that was holding him up. In front of him was a huge parade of Aaine and Kariko fans who were holding a strike of sorts. He made a boisterous statement about how his feelings for Aaine were much truer than theirs. They noticed because he was being very loud, and they turned from a protest group into a mob and began attacking him. In another part of the city, Sana and his roommates were arriving at the lobby of Imuum. It was a luxurious hotel venue. Sana sat down on a sofa and stared at his odd-looking roommates. The receptionist told them that if they could find their names in the system, they would still be let in, so they were waiting for them to find it. Sana asked what the big deal was with getting into Imuum. It was some sort of tropical resort planet for the rich that was in Jurian territory, and the party they had tickets for was a party to celebrate its opening. It was rumored that a bunch of famous models and entertainers would be there. "Sorry to keep you waiting," a butler said to them. "Sorry, but it seems that your invitation ticket is counterfeit." Kenneth and Rajo turned pale blue and froze. In fact, a lot of elaborate counterfeit tickets have been circulated recently. "I'm sorry." Imuum, Kenneth and Rajo shouted at the sky. Elsewhere it was confirmed that the police had shot down their target, whoever the target was, and that the two officers who were abducted were safely transferred to Aire's office before the shootout. Aaine showed up on the scene. The place she picked was just slightly off from where Sana was. She asked the police there if they were issuing an evacuation order for the area, but they weren't. They got a call about a battleship-class vehicle being stolen from the Tenin family. Syria was headed back to the city in a large, armored battleship to find Sana. Earlier he had been beaten up by Amaine's fanboys, but he survived. The GP decided to deploy a full-on assault in response to stop him from blowing up the city.